age of intellectual cannibalism. If you want to be this prophet, this leader, you often have to show your authority over all the other false prophets. So in order to propagate their leadership, they gotta eat other people. Intellectually, just eat them up.
So the phenomena that Seema is describing here reminds me of a 50-year-old book about poetry written by the literary critic Harold Bloom called The Anxiety of Influence. And while it's mostly about 19th century romantic poets, the sort of larger point that Bloom is making is that all artists are plagued by an anxiety that they will never be better than the people who came before them and inspired them to become artists in the first place. Worry that their work will always be seen as a derivative in some way. And so there's this tremendous pressure to create something that is new, original, and better. And so your precursors are not just your inspiration or your influence, they are also your adversary. Either you will defeat them and you will be remembered as one of the greats, or else you will lose and be forgotten. And if you're thinking that this all sounds very unnecessarily macho and toxically masculine, you are absolutely correct, and that's a very common complaint that's been levied against Bloom and this particular model. That said, the 6 revisionary ratios that Bloom identified, the strategies that artists use to overcome their anxiety of influence and establish themselves as great artists, are really useful tools. There's the clinamen of poetic misreading that subtly deviates from the original, implying that it was inaccurate in some way. Tessera, the elaboration or extension of a work into a new direction, new territory. Kenosis, a discontinuity or a break with its spirit or inspiration. Demonization, where the artist teases out some small aspect in the original to make something larger out of it. Ascesis, where the artist is emphasizing their own uniqueness, trying to distinguish themselves from their influence. And lastly, apophrates, a situation where an artist who is already established, maybe even a major star, is trying to give a bit of a signal boost to the lesser-known names that inspired them. But in so doing makes it kind of seem like their influences are actually derivatives. Fame and power literally confuse and obscure causality in time itself. And so despite the fact that Bloom himself discussed this as, sort of a physical battle, I hope it's clear from the description of those tools that it's a lot subtler than that. But all of which is to say that we are not in like a particularly cannibalistic era right now. When Bloom wrote this book, he was talking about poets who had, in some cases, died 150 years earlier. Art, intellectuals, influencers have always operated cannibalistically.